The classroom was shaped like a dodecahedron, its silver walls pulsating with soft light. Every few seconds, the floor subtly shifted, adjusting to the gravitational preferences of its occupants. Most of the students were from low-G environments, their limbs long and their movements slow and sweeping. A few were from high-G worlds, stockier, with denser bones and a perpetual look of fatigue, and then there was one human. Cassian Alder sat cross-legged on the floor, his back against a wall that had recently been the ceiling. His boots were magnetized, but not enough to counter the erratic gravity changes of the classroom. He had learned to brace for the shifts by instinct. His tablet floated nearby, tethered with a flexible cable to his belt clip. At the center of the room, suspended in a translucent orb, was Professor Graln. Graln resembled a fleshy spiral staircase, each segment of his body rotating independently. His 3 eyes blinked in sequence, scanning the room. "Your next evaluation," Graln announced, his voice vibrating through the room without bothering with translation implants, "is the gravity flip test." Half the class groaned well, made whatever equivalent sound their species had for groaning. One student let out a puff of bioluminescent gas. Another quietly sank into its shell. Cassian blinked. "Gravity flip test," Professor Graln's spiral body twisted slightly. "Each of you will navigate an inverted gravitational field of my design. Objects will behave unpredictably. You will be required to retrieve a target located in the center of the anomaly and return it to your deployment point. Survival is assumed. Performance will be graded." A student with moss-like skin raised a frond. "What if our physiology does not tolerate gravitational inversion?" "Then you will fail," Graln replied. Cassian leaned forward. "Wait, hold on. This field, it's artificial, right? Not planetary? Of course. The anomaly will be generated within Lab Sector Theta. You are permitted to bring one self-devised enhancement or tool. No external assistance, no team-ups, no atmospheric alterations." Cassian scratched his head. "So we're basically being thrown into a mess of spinning gravity and told to fetch a ball, correct?" "The test begins in 4 planetary cycles. Dismissed." The orb retracted into the ceiling. The walls rotated again, and the floor re-established itself with a thud. Cassian stood up, catching his tablet mid-air. He walked the long corridor back to his dormitory, dodging a few students who were already deep in argument about centripetal force thresholds and mass redistribution. His own thoughts were louder. By Earth standards, Cassian was barely out of grad school. He had been selected for the Intergalactic University Exchange because of his background in mechanical engineering and theoretical physics, and as the recruiter put it, a capacity for functional chaos. But this was something else. Gravity wasn't just a force here. It was a subject, a challenge. A weapon, sometimes. Inside his room, Cassian set the tablet on his desk and opened the design suite. He had 4 days. He could build something. Maybe. On the second day, he hadn't slept. The initial design had failed miserably. He'd started with thrusters, but the fuel weight alone made the rig unstable. Then he'd played with magnetic fields, but the artificial test chamber wouldn't react to them. He needed something that didn't fight gravity. He needed something that ignored it. He stared at the old schematics from his Earth project, a theoretical anti-gravity pulse emitter, nothing more than a thought experiment at the time. It had been laughed out of the university's grant committee, but up here, no one had laughed. They didn't even question it, they just asked if it worked. He filed a requisition request for superconductive alloys and a graviton flux stabilizer. The quartermaster, a translucent blue being named Kelvis, raised an eyebrow as he scanned the order. "You planning to implode a moon?" Cassian rubbed his eyes. "No, just trying not to die in a gravity blender." Kelvis grunted and handed him the components. "Don't blow off your legs." "We're still scrubbing the walls from the last student who tried something clever." By the 3rd day, he had the frame built. It resembled a harness, worn like a vest with a circular belt around the waist. The power source was limited, no fusion cores allowed in the test, but he managed to rig a capacitor that could hold enough charge for about 6 minutes of active use. He ran the first test in the simulation room. The field activated and the ceiling became the floor. Cassian hovered. Not floated, hovered. He leaned forward and the belt tilted his gravity vector. He moved in a slow arc toward the wall, then reversed. It was working. He landed hard on his side when the power cut out. The capacitor overheated and the belt stabilizers snapped loose. He lay on the floor, gasping, ribs aching. Kelvis stood in the doorway, holding a fire-suppressant canister. "You good?" Cassian groaned. "I think I cracked something. You want medical?" He nodded. X-rays showed a hairline fracture in his left rib. Not enough to keep him out of the test, but enough to make breathing painful. "You need to take it easy," the medic, a beaked creature named Torma, said. "No high-impact movement, no sudden twisting, and absolutely no gravitational stress fields." Cassian sat up, wincing. "What if I have a test that's nothing but gravitational stress fields? Then make peace with your ancestors." Back in his dorm, he adjusted the belt. He added a failsafe. If the capacitor overheated again, it would shut down gradually instead of instantly. He reinforced the frame with a carbon weave. Every movement now hurt, but he didn't stop. On test day, the students were led into Lab Sector Theta. The room was a massive sphere, nearly 100 meters across. Suspended in the center, surrounded by swirling light, was the target. A silver orb, no bigger than a basketball. Professor Graln hovered at the edge of the chamber. "One at a time. You will enter the gravitational field from the entry hatch. You must retrieve the target and return to the hatch. If you are incapacitated, you will be extracted and disqualified. Begin." The first student, a creature with 6 tentacles and no discernible front or back, slithered into the chamber. Within seconds, it was flung into a slow spin, limbs flailing in zero-G confusion. It managed to touch the orb, but couldn't get back. Graln extracted it with a magnetic tether. One by one, the students tried. Some failed to reach the orb. Others reached it but couldn't move after. One was briefly trapped in a pocket of reversed gravity and vomited something green and glittery. Cassian waited, belt adjusted, capacitor humming. "Cassian Alder," Graln called. He stepped forward. The belt was warm against his back. Inside the chamber, gravity shifted immediately. The walls became the floor, then the ceiling. His head spun. He tapped the activation button. The belt hummed to life and the chaos stopped. His body was no longer being flung around. He had his own gravity now. He leaned forward and moved. The silver orb was still 30 meters away, suspended in the center. He angled his body and drifted, the belt adjusting his vector. He passed through a zone of lateral gravity, but the belt compensated. He reached the orb and grabbed it, the surface cold and smooth. The trip back was harder. The field fought him. A sudden surge flipped his orientation and he tumbled. The belt struggled to stabilize, the capacitors draining faster than predicted. He clenched his jaw, pain flaring in his side. The fracture protested every movement. He focused on the hatch, almost there. With a final push, he reached the edge and rolled through the threshold. The field deactivated. The belt shut down with a hiss. He collapsed on the floor, gasping. Professor Graln floated down beside him. "You succeeded," Cassian nodded, wincing. "How'd I do?" "You were the only one to return the orb." He lay back, chest heaving. The belt sparked once, then went silent. Kelvis appeared with a towel and a water pack. "Told you not to blow off your legs," Cassian coughed. "Yeah, but I still have all my ribs." Kelvis stared. "You should not." Cassian laughed once, then winced and shut his eyes. The next day, he was back in the medbay. The rib had worsened, now a full fracture. Torma frowned but said nothing as she adjusted his brace. Professor Graln entered, his spiral body rotating slowly. "You ignored medical advice," Graln said. Cassian looked up. "I passed the test." "Yes, but it cost," Cassian shrugged. "That's gravity for you." Graln tilted slightly. "Your tool, the belt, it was not designed by university standards." "No," Cassian said. "It was adapted from an old Earth concept. It was effective." "Barely." Graln paused. "Would you be willing to teach a seminar on its construction?" Cassian blinked. "Seriously, gravity is a subject," Graln said. "But so is adaptation. You demonstrated both." Cassian leaned back, the brace creaking. "All right. But no more gravity flips for a while." "Agreed." As Graln left, Kelvis poked his head in. "You're becoming popular." Cassian smiled weakly. "That's usually when things get dangerous." The lights in the medbay dimmed slightly to signal rest hours. Most students were either asleep or pretending to be, but Cassian sat upright on the examination bench, still in the brace, still sore, and trying to adjust the angle of the diagnostic scanner without activating the proximity alarm again. His fingers were numb from the cooling gel wrap around his ribs, but he refused to call the nurse for help. He didn't need another lecture on species-appropriate rest cycles. Tormer returned, carrying a tray with a small bowl of opaque green fluid and a packet of compressed nutrient blocks. "I'm not drinking that again," Cassian muttered. She ignored him and set the tray down. "It reduces inflammation, and you already skipped one dose." "I skipped it because it smells like a compost bin during monsoon season." Torma's beak clicked. "The next time, don't fracture your bones during recreational physics trials." Cassian exhaled through his nose. Arguing with Torma was like trying to outstare a statue. "What's the policy on re-entering practical modules after a grade's been finalized?" he asked. Tormer ran a scan along his side, adjusting the brace slightly. "Depends on the department. Why? I want to test the belt again. Outside the simulator. Absolutely not. I'll take a hover rig. I won't activate any gravity fluctuations." Torma didn't respond. She adjusted the nutrient pack and walked to the console near the wall. Cassian watched her scroll through several data panes with her talon. She stopped, then tapped something. "You're not being cleared for any physical exertion until the fracture calcifies. That will take another 5 or 6 days with current treatment. Try to accelerate it, and you risk permanent instability." Cassian crossed his arms, then immediately regretted it. "I'll be fine. You won't be admired for dying dramatically. I might be remembered, though." Torma turned, eyes narrowing. "You think this is about legacy, it's about the belt. I want to know what it can really do." The test chamber was limited. "If I can get time on the ops deck, you're a student, not a pilot. If I get supervision," she shook her head and walked to the door panel, "eat the nutrient blocks. If I find them hidden under the bedding again, I'll start intravenous feeding." Cassian waited until she was gone, then leaned back and stared at the ceiling. He'd seen the post-test reports. Several faculty members had flagged his design for academic review, not suspicion interest. The kind that might lead to a research exemption or a petition for independent study. But only if he could prove stability, repeatability, and safety. He tapped the console by the bed and pulled up the university's equipment scheduling interface. The ops deck was booked solid for the next week, mostly by third-year propulsion students and a few visiting researchers. But the environmental chamber and engineering subsection 12 had a narrow window of availability during the next maintenance cycle. Cassian slid off the bed, wincing as his side protested. He wrapped the gel pack tighter and limped toward his locker. 20 minutes later, he was in the sublevel, belt slung over one shoulder, wearing a set of maintenance coveralls borrowed from the robotics wing. The corridor was quiet, lit only by the ambient blue glow of the emergency strips. Most of the engineering sublevels didn't draw interest unless there was a fire or a power outage. The environmental chamber was a wide, hexagonal room with modular walls and a central platform for load testing. Cassian activated the control panel and programmed the room for 0 atmosphere, then canceled it. He wasn't testing in vacuum, not yet. He set the belt on the floor and opened the casing. The capacitor had recharged and the failsafe was still in place. He ran a diagnostic, no faults, no errors. The stabilizers had recalibrated since the last run. Cassian stepped into the harness and locked the belt around his waist. The chest straps pinched slightly, but he ignored it. He activated the belt. The hum was softer, more controlled. He flexed one leg and slowly rose off the floor, adjusting his tilt with micro-movements. The belt responded fluidly. He increased output by 10%, still stable, then 15%. His trajectory began to curve upward. He tapped into the manual override and reoriented his gravity vector. The room rotated around him. He was upside down relative to the platform, yet he felt no pull, no imbalance. He pushed further, accelerating laterally. This time the belt compensated instantly. No delay, no stutter. He reached the far wall and stopped mid-air. The strain on his ribs was sharp but manageable. He hovered there, suspended in silence. Then the lights flickered. Cassian's head jerked up. A moment later, the emergency panel above the door lit up red. Warning: access breach in environmental chamber. Authorization required. He tapped the comms panel on his wrist. This is Cassian Alder. I'm inside the chamber. This is a scheduled test under maintenance protocol. The system did not respond. The belt held him steady, but the lights dimmed again. A low vibration passed through the floor. Then the wall panel opened and a figure stepped in, or rather slid. It was over 2 meters tall, shaped like a tapered quartz tower with no visible limbs. A subtle pulse moved through its crystalline surface as it glided forward. Cassian stared. "You're not maintenance." The figure didn't answer. Instead, it tilted slightly, scanning him with a beam of blue light. "Are you with the university?" The beam intensified. Cassian moved slowly to deactivate the belt, but the figure emitted a sharp tone. Okay, he said. "Hands off." The figure shifted again, then projected a holographic glyph in the air. It rotated, displaying a schematic, his schematic. The belt, with annotations in an unfamiliar script. Cassian's breath caught. "Where did you get that?" The figure retracted the projection. Another glyph appeared this time, a simple symbol. A circle divided by a jagged diagonal line. Cassian frowned. "That's not university code." The figure emitted a short pulse, then turned to leave. Cassian floated down and deactivated the belt. His ribs screamed as his feet hit the floor. The figure slid back through the panel, which sealed behind it. He stumbled to the console and replayed the security feed. Nothing. The last recorded frame showed him alone. He ran a system diagnostic. The logs had been scrubbed. Cassian sat down hard, his knees shaking. Whoever or whatever that was, it had accessed his design. It wasn't stealing it, it was studying it, and it wanted him to know. The emergency light still flashed, but the room felt colder now. He stood slowly and locked the belt back into its case. If the belt attracted that kind of attention, it was more than a student project. And if something out there wanted it, he had to know why. But first, he needed to get back to the medbay before Torma noticed the missing gel wrap. He limped out of the chamber, heart pounding, belt secured under his arm. The door to the medbay hissed open with a sharper than usual tone, and Cassian limped in with the awkward cadence of someone trying to appear healthy while actively losing an argument with gravity. Torma looked up from her terminal and immediately powered off the display mid-sentence. "You left your bed," she said flatly, already reaching for the portable scanner. "I needed to test a theory," Cassian replied, placing the belt case beside the diagnostics bench. "And I brought the equipment back in one piece. That counts for something, right?" Without responding, Torma activated the scanner and ran it across his side. Her feathers bristled faintly, a sign Cassian had come to associate with professional disappointment. "You've worsened the fracture," she said, adjusting the scanner's angle. "There's evidence of micro-tearing around the bone edges, and the soft tissue damage has expanded. Well, that would explain the stabbing sensation every time I breathe. Congratulations," she said. "You're now banned from walking unattended for the next 3 days." Cassian lowered himself slowly onto the diagnostic bench. "You'll need to define unattended." Torma turned her gaze on him, unblinking. "It means I attach a proximity tether to your belt, and if you move more than 2 meters without my permission, campus security gets an alert." He winced. "That's a bit dramatic, don't you think? You're the one who snuck into a secured test chamber with a fractured rib and no atmospheric clearance. You forgot unauthorized evaluation by an unknown crystalline life form." Torma paused. "That was not in the incident report." Cassian rubbed his eyes. "Because there was no report. The security feed was wiped and the logs are gone, but it happened." She regarded him silently for a beat. "Describe it." He hesitated. "Tall, translucent, no limbs, moved like it was sliding on ice. Projected my belt schematics into the air. Didn't speak, just scanned me, then left. No markings, no ID." Torma folded her arms. "You considered the possibility of hallucination." "I was tired, not delusional. Besides, the belt was accessed. It left a residual data signature in the housing." "I checked. Show me." Cassian opened the case and activated the diagnostic screen. A faint trail of blue code floated above the belt's interface. Torma leaned in, tapping a sequence to isolate the string. That's not from any university system, she said. No, Cassian agreed. And it didn't try to steal the design. It was studying it, like it recognized the principles but needed to confirm they worked. She toggled the view again. This coding structure, there's a rhythmic loop, almost like it's meant to be read aloud. Cassian frowned. You think it's a language, possibly, or an encoding method designed for species without visual processing. Either way, it's complex. He leaned back slowly, careful not to aggravate his ribs. That thing didn't act like a thief, it acted like a scout. Torma stood abruptly. We're escalating this to Graln. Cassian raised a hand. Wait, no, you were approached by an unknown entity with access to secured university schematics. That's a protocol violation of the highest order. And what happens next? He asked. They quarantine the belt, lock me out of my own design, and I get labeled a security risk. I'm a student, not a diplomat. You're also not a fool, Torma said, but you're acting like one. Cassian closed the case. Just give me a day. Let me run one more controlled test. I'll document everything. If it shows up again, I'll report it myself. Torma didn't speak for several breaths. Then she reached into a drawer and pulled out a slim metal band. She clipped it to his wrist. Proximity tether, 2 meters. You leave, it alerts me. Cassian sighed. Fair, you get your 1 day. After that, this goes to Graln. Deal. She turned away. And if you fall unconscious during your test, I'm switching you to intravenous feeding for the rest of the semester. Cassian groaned. Understood. The next morning, well before the first light cycle, Cassian stood in the materials lab of the propulsion wing. The room was long, with reinforced walls and a suspended platform meant for engine component testing. He had reserved it under the guise of harmonic resonance trials, a vague enough description to avoid questions. The belt was fully charged. He'd rewired the failsafe to include a manual override, just in case something went wrong mid-flight. His ribs were still wrapped, but the pain had dulled into a manageable throb. He adjusted the belt, stepped onto the platform, and activated the field. This time, he didn't hover. He moved. He leaned forward, increasing output in short pulses. The belt responded immediately, adjusting his personal gravity vector in real time. He banked left, then right, tracing wide arcs across the room. The platform blurred beneath him, then he cut the vector entirely. For a brief moment, he was weightless. He twisted midair and reactivated the field, catching himself before impact. His boots skimmed the floor and he surged upward again, not flying, falling, selectively. After 3 minutes, the warning tone sounded, capacitor at 20%. He slowed, touched down, and powered off the belt. Breathing heavily, he sat on the edge of the platform and pulled the diagnostic screen from the case. No malfunctions. No overheating. Stabilizers fully synced. He exhaled and leaned back, letting his pulse settle. A soft tone echoed through the room. He froze. The tone repeated short, then long. Same as before. He turned nothing. Then the far wall shimmered, not opened, shimmered, like heat ripples on a desert road. From the distortion, the crystalline figure emerged once more. Cassian didn't move. The figure paused, then projected the same glyph. But this time, it added another. A map, not of the university. Of a space station, unfamiliar design with a gravity ring and a central tower. It pulsed faintly. Cassian stepped forward, ignoring the pain in his side. You want me to come there? The figure tilted. Cassian hesitated. Why? Another glyph appeared. This one, a symbol he recognized. The university's crest split down the center. His chest tightened. You're saying, it's compromised. The figure pulsed once, then retracted the projection, then it shimmered and was gone. Cassian stood in silence, heart pounding. He tapped the belt, opened the last display. The map was still there, embedded in the system memory. Coordinates, vector data, and a timestamp 6 hours from now. He looked around the empty lab, then he powered down the console, secured the belt, and walked slowly, carefully back to the medbay. Torma glanced up as he entered. You're early. He placed the belt on her desk. I'm done. She raised an eyebrow. No dramatic injuries, no mysterious visitors. They came, he said. They left. I got what I needed. She scanned his face. And whatever's going on. It's not our problem to solve. Not yet. He walked to his bed, sat down, and lay back with a groan. Torma folded her arms. You're not going to tell me, are you? Nope, she sighed. Fine, take your painkillers. And if you try to sneak out again, I'll inject you with a paralytic." Cassian smiled faintly. Understood. He closed his eyes. The belt was locked in her drawer, the map encrypted and buried in a subroutine. No one else needed to know, not yet.